AI Chronicles. I'm Sonam, your host, and today's episode is going to be a bit more focused on product and technology in the era of AI. I want to understand how teams are actually thinking about building, scaling, and making decisions when AI is part of the stack. And to do that, I am here with Manasvi from Gracenote, who has been the AI practitioner from the early days with a ton of retail and e commerce. So, we are going to get into everything from product thinking in AI to data and infrastructure and what it really takes to ship the AI powered systems in production. But before we get into that, I want to ask a very fun question. Since I know that you love coffee, what's the first grinder that you, or what's the grinder that you, coffee grinder that you use?
Uh, I have a Weber Workshops EG1 grinder.
Okay.
It's like it- I think it's one of the best grinders. I love it, and it looks more like a telescope. So yeah.
Oh, even better. Nice. So do you have like a whole setup in your house where you have this
Oh
fancy
yes. Oh
grinder?
yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. Coffee is my daily driver. Like that's my meditation. I start my day making my own cup of coffee, grinding the
Nice.
beans. So that's like the 5 minutes that I have, which are just mine. Right. So I think that's coffee for me.
It's very therapeutic, isn't it? Just to make the whole
Exactly.
thing. Ah, I totally
Exactly.
agree with you.
People don't understand all the chebang is actually therapeutic.
It's therapeutic. Yes, I totally get it. The
Absolutely.
feeling of making the starting from the grinding to making that first shot of espresso. Oh, delightful. Awesome.
It's
Well,
delightful.
I have a feeling that we could talk about coffee quite a bit, but
Oh, yes.
but given this episode is about product and AI, let's get into that. Um, so from your vantage point, how has the how has building products changed in the last couple of years, especially with AI amidst us? For what I mean by that is like what decisions feel fundamentally different now compared to the pre-LLM days?
I think Sonam, that's a great question. And I think it's more layered question than, most people make of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look, I think whenever we were making softwares in the past, um, there is a bit of work that software does.
Mm-hmm.
And there is also a bit of training that humans go through, you know, what a software can do and how to do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because fundamentally, most softwares will go with a 70-30 or an 80-20 rule, right? I will cover 80% of the use cases. These are the boundary conditions. This is what the software would do, right? And humans then get trained to work around those constraints,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you may have, you know, first binary and then, 7, 8 edge cases that you actually capture. But with AI, really, what humans are getting trained and actually chat GPTs and the Claudes and, the Geminis of the world are doing it very well is a very unconstrained view of human interaction with computers, right?
Yeah.
So human brains are getting trained that I can actually use a machine in a very, very unconstrained, which brings us to a very interesting, you know, part in the life cycle of software development, that expectation will now flow into every piece of software that comes out, right?
Mm.
So human expectation is actually, I have these cases, these are the nuances of my life. When I say that, transfer this amount of money to my son, let's say to a banking software, you need to understand which son I'm talking about, right? So
Yeah.
right, so all of that needs a fair bit of, understanding on how you would define products, right? Products
Mm.
are fundamentally changing. The probabilistic nature of LLMs is a, is something that you need to consider as a fundamental design principle. From an input standpoint, when user interactions are going to be open-ended. So really, the very fundamental thing that changes is how you think about the product, how you take into a very open-ended input,
Mm.
a probabilistic system, and still derive or drive, outcomes. It
Right.
cannot be a forever, chat mode, right? Like people have to do bank transactions, people have to do commerce outcomes, right? So how do you drive outcomes out?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think, in my opinion, more than the technology, it's actually the product design that changes. How do you incorporate those probabilistic parts that are coming in, and the nuances and the personalization that uh, the softwares have to include as a fundamental or the core design principle. I think that has changed, and I don't see today that thinking completely percolating in the products that are getting made either.
Ah, what do you think that what what might be the reason behind that?
I think to some extent, I feel that there is a flood of information
Mm.
or knowledge that is coming in more from a technology standpoint, right? Like what models are coming, what are the benchmarks, and this is this parameter model, and that so a lot of technology practitioners and thinkers, I think, are getting completely swamped by that information, and they are still
Right.
processing that information rather than uh, focusing on, this is fundamentally what I get out of, these models.
Mm.
Uh, Yesterday I could process, something with 30 decision, flows. Today I can have infinite decision flows, right? I can
Mm.
use thousands and thousands of more parameters to create a decision, right? And then think about, what will drive value, what will drive outcomes for the consumers, right? So I think that part, uh, we as practitioners, I think we are not thinking as much
Mm.
and getting warped into this architecture, that
Yeah.
model, bigger model, smaller model, inferences and whatnot, right?
I
So,
mean,
so
yeah.
the modalities of everyday, technology, uh, and the big tech is actually doing a very, very good job in socializing it as
Mm-hmm.
well. But I think ultimately it has to percolate into how, it drives outcomes for consumers, it drives
Mm-hmm.
interactions and product experience.
It's also the shiny object syndrome. I feel like that also gets in between with people.
Um, yes and no. I also feel that it is a shiny object, right? So no doubts about it. Uh, but yes, I think the velocity at which
Mm.
information is coming is tremendous, right? Earlier I remember in an era when newer UI frameworks and UX frameworks used to come, every few months. It was overwhelming, and a lot of teams would be like, let's re-architect. And so every 6 months, you see
Yeah.
re-architecture happening in companies. I think that timeline today is like days or sometimes hours,
Mm-hmm.
literally,
Yep.
right? New models and new technologies coming in. So yeah, I think industry will take a little bit time to figure out, how to make sense of all of this information which is coming
That actually gives me
in.
a great segue to my next question, especially with this whole hype versus production reality that we were talking about. So, of course, there's a lot of excitement around AI powered features like we just discussed, but at your level, you're thinking about reliability, scale, and ROI. So, where do you see the biggest gap today between what's being demoed and what actually ships?
I think I have been coding since I was 5 years old. Uh, okay. And I have not seen, products getting shipped as quickly as today, right? Like
Yeah.
uh, probably I would say 95% or more code today is generated in my teams.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, really easy to, put up demos and prototypes out there. But what, you would also fundamentally realize when you're trying to ship something at scale that the fundamentals of software engineering don't change really,
Yeah.
right? In the sense that, yes, disasters may happen. So how do you actually make sure that, what you're running is reliable? While developing, how do you make sure that the right evaluation criterias are put through? And we just spoke about, a very open-ended input, a very probabilistic system. So what really becomes even more important is, how do you actually create the right checkers in your structure?
Mm-hmm.
The other nightmare that has happened really is with this, with the code generation and the tooling around, how software is developed. Maintainability of the code has become a real challenge, right? So
Mm.
there have been a lot of conversation around spec-driven development, etc., but then specs themselves are very fluid. They are never, in real engineering and technology and product discussions. Specs are also what you and I actually speak about.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit of a shared understanding, and not everything gets translated on paper, right? So there is a lot of you know work that needs to happen, and I think today companies are, and when I even speak to my peers in different other companies, people are figuring out the best ways in which things like reliability, scalability, security,
Mm-hmm.
how do we safeguard that? And there are a lot of mechanisms that are being developed which are very handcrafted today. There are some tools which are coming in which are trying to make it better, but I think that's a journey. I feel the sooner we realize that these are very fundamental, and go back and understand how this evolved for when code was written by hand,
Yeah.
I think the better it would be, because principally very similar concepts would apply here. The only thing is they have to be applied and constructed in a slightly different manner and at a slightly different velocity. Like you cannot probably have a human checker for reams and reams of codes that can get produced in like 2 hours, right? So
Yeah.
you need to build systems slightly differently. Principles remain the same.
Mm-hmm. That's very well said. And you have a lot of experience in the product side of the world. So I'm curious, and this is something I'm sure my listeners would take advantage. And me personally, like who intends to be in the product line later down in my future. So, what differentiates a good product leader in AI from a great one? Is it technical depth, intuition for user value, or the ability to navigate that ambiguity?
Can I say all three?
Yes.
So I think one very interesting part, right? I think intuition for user value, understanding the business vertical that you are in. I think that has always been the core for product managers, right, or
Mm-hmm.
or product leaders. Um, Intuition helps you strategize on what you need to do. Um, Product value and understanding what the customer needs are. I think that helps you build the exact product, right? That's
Mm.
how I mentally differentiate between the two. What has become very interesting right now is that if you don't understand the underlying technology, right? So, we spoke about open-ended inputs, consumers actually expressing their heart out to a software.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say it's not just, chat GPT, it's basically your expectation graph. You do not have, as a consumer, very soon you would run out of patience if your commerce experiences don't bubble up the products that you are thinking of, literally,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, those open-ended aspects, the probabilistic nature of your processing engine, and the kind of speed that can be achieved in terms of developing products or personalizing products to individuals. Um, that needs a fair bit of understanding of the technology, core technology itself, because understanding technology is equals to is equal to possibilities. So
Yeah.
art of possibility you can only understand if you understand the technology. So I highly encourage, in fact, uh, as much as you can, I think product leaders should go very deep into some of the AI technologies and stacks that are out there, understand the capability and the ramifications of it, in actually building the products, right? So it's all about the art of possibility.
Nice. Now, my question is that given that, as we spoke just few minutes ago, that how there is so many things coming out, new models, new technology, new something or the other, every single day almost. How does or staying in the know or understanding all of that as soon as the technology comes out, it's humanly impossible to be, to know everything. So that, like, how does one balance with this product mindset and the new technology and the art of possibility that you just said?
Look, I think to be fair, I think all of us are figuring out, the best ways to keep
Yeah.
up. And I wish, there were ways to say that, do this or do that, and you
Right.
can stay, ahead. I think the answer, and this is something very similar to even coding today,
Mm-hmm.
that, with all the code that is getting generated, how do I actually review that code? How do I look at what design principles it is adhering to, etc. Uh, just, cannot happen with a human reviewer,
Mm.
right? So where I would push is that with that kind of a velocity, lean on AI to actually filter out what could be important to you,
Mm.
distill it, abstract it. It's otherwise humanly impossible. The generation side, the technology is growing really, really quickly. The literature, the videos, the content on the explainability of it is also tremendously large, right? So uh, I would urge, podcasters like you, or, content creators like you. No, actually, they play a massive role,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like five good podcasters, when they synthesize, what all has happened or transpired in the last 7 days. I think that's really, really good. And then you pick up the sliver that is interesting to you, and you
Right.
go and do deep research around it. But I think the value of people who synthesize knowledge, AI systems that can synthesize knowledge for you, which is relevant to you, personalized to you, I think uh, you should actively look at that. And I think that's the
Mm.
only way you can really understand what's going on
Yeah.
in that.
Before we get into a complete brain rot with so much context, just have
Yeah,
it
no,
more
I am
personalized.
an avid reader of, Substacks and everything,
Yeah.
but I have my own agents who summarize everything,
Yes.
give me a brief, and then if I find something interesting, I'll go deep into it. Otherwise, it's almost impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. Cool. Okay. Want to shift gears a little bit towards a bit more technical. Let's talk about metadata, data infrastructure, and of course, AI is already there. Now, you work at Gracenote, and I can only imagine that it's deeply rooted in metadata and content intelligence. How does that foundation translate into the current wave of AI, especially when everyone is suddenly talking about or has been talking about embeddings, vector databases, and multimodal systems?
Look, interestingly, Gracenote has been, the engine or the reference for media metadata across the globe, right?
Right.
So it uh, it is at probably 90+% market share in terms of, the metadata it drives almost every experience that you open on your television. But I think viewer habits have changed or are
Hmm.
changing very, very rapidly, right? I think most of us are trained to have shorter, attention
Attention span.
spans.
Yeah.
We need, we were good with 30 seconds. Now, you would be surprised that the industry average is coming to around 6 to 9 seconds kind of a
Oh,
thing.
God.
That's the
Yeah.
attention span. So what it really means is that people are searching for exactly what they need,
Hmm.
right? That scene where, Tom Cruise did that, or, that scene where Brad Pitt was sad, right? So I think people are getting into very, very specific aspects. And that's where, or they need, similarity searches at scale, right? Like I am wearing, this black shirt and, something similar, but, with some, different buttons or whatever it is, right? Now, that's where I feel, a lot that we are developing through AI, whether it's, looking into videos and, understanding the videos as a human does, or understanding your catalogs in a commerce ecosystem. Uh, that's where I think a lot of the vector databases, etc., are shining,
Mhm.
and they probably would become the center stone or the core data store for powering all of these experiences. Having said that, I think it's also very important that most of that knowledge is rooted in truth, right? So there
Yeah.
is a level of ground truth that is established. So a good system today would go into something which gives you approximate similarity
Mhm.
uh, to answer the open-endedness of user inputs or
Mhm.
user queries, uh, and then ground it into the truths or the entities and the labeling that is out there, right? Like uh, labeling always has been very important. Uh, you understand that this person in the company does this, has, strategic responsibilities, execution responsibilities. By the way, I cannot describe that person all the time with this kind of a description, right?
Right.
I give them a title of CEO, right?
Mm.
I give them a title of CBO. You can't say that the road which has trees lined, on both sides, but, I would want to give it, okay, this is the name of the street, right? So we need labels, we need grounding. And I think data stores, as they evolve, would be very closely fusing these two concepts together, right?
Mm.
The right labeling, the right knowledge graph, and a very, very strong, similarity bindings, maybe through vectors, maybe through some other mechanisms. But I think that's typically where it'll go. And that in the AI stack for me is one of the most fundamental aspects to look at, right? How well do you design these two components? How
Mm.
do they play well? I think that's very, very core. So really, I think, Sonam, if you think about it, this combination of multimodal vector databases and a graph knowledge on top of it is the centerpiece for even, what we are developing. Uh, so, think about products like ApertureDB. They are really, really, differentiated technologies in the market today. And they make a huge difference, when you start thinking about your AI workflows overall.
Yeah. Okay, before we wrap up, I have one more question for you. This is more around build versus buy versus adapt. So, when it comes to integrating AI into products, whether it's models, infrastructure, or even the data systems like we were talking, how do you think about build versus buy versus partner decisions? Or like, what is that one mistake that you see teams make here?
Great question. And I think, again, I would say that really, if you start thinking, build versus buy hasn't changed as much as you think it has.
Really?
Look, what was your framework before AI on build versus buy, right? Your framework was that I will buy something which is not core to my business,
Hmm.
right? So, does not give me strategic benefit. It's not a core driver to my business. That's what I buy.
Mm-hmm.
I build something which creates IP,
Mm-hmm.
which is core to my business. It's a core business driver. I want to control it, right? Now, in today's world, broadly, if you're not going into something very specific, broadly, models will be commoditized. Infrastructure is commoditized, right? Like any other time, to be honest. You everyone has access to GCPs and AWSs, right? With or without the AI part of it. And
Yeah.
that's the infra, right? So I think that gets democratized. I feel that's a very buy bucket today,
Hmm.
with exceptions where you need more fine tuning, etc. A lot of what you do, and there is a very interesting paper, probably a Stanford paper, which came very recently. Facebook also, republished or uh, you know uh, put another paper in the same context. It's called hard. It's around harness engineering,
Oh, okay.
which is basically to say that with pure play models, you get to an accuracy of, let's say, 50%. But, to get to your business outcomes and at a 90% accuracy to your business outcomes, what you do around, the models is the most important thing, because that reflects your understanding of the business, what outcomes you want to drive. And that's a very, very interesting. So it kind of claims that, it's a 6x bump into the accuracy and,
Mm-hmm.
the outcomes that you get to. So that harness engineering is something that you would want to definitely build yourself, because you have the best understanding of your consumer, your space.
Yeah.
You may in the, in the process may have to fine tune models, pick up open weight models, even maybe create a foundational model at some point in time, depending on what domains, etc. you're working with. But really, I think the decision plane still remains what is core to your business, which is the harness engineering, etc. Still is a build. Uh, Now, you may partner with someone because your teams are still uh, trying to understand and come to speed with some of the new technologies. But ultimately, I think that's a core IP that you need to develop.
Right. Nice.
Models are more commoditized today.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap. Manas, we sincerely appreciate you sharing your perspective, especially around how product thinking and AI infrastructure are evolving. And everyone listening, if you found this useful, make sure you follow AI Chronicles for more such conversations. And we have got a lot more coming your way. So thanks again for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you, Manasvi.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really pleasure.